Next, the next thing we're going to look at here is Globalization Studio review. Very briefly, I think we're almost out of our time. This is very important, and I needed to point it out. It's one of those things that we need to know as we move into dynamics, because you will hear these terminologies. One of them came up in one of my interviews. You hear these terminologies, or you might have to say them. You might have to talk about them when if the questions you have asked aligns with what these applications are used for. You see, Microsoft have a lot of applications that does different things within the system. One of them is called the Globalization Studio. Now, what is it all about? We have had the fast track, we have heard about the Power Platform, we have heard about, we just saw success by design. Now we're hearing Globalization Studio. And Globalization Studio is simply used to run global businesses. That's why it's called Globalization Studio. And to run their businesses globally, customers must meet certain country or region specific requirements. For example, if you're in Germany, if you're in the UK and you're deploying Microsoft Dynamics to Germany, to France, to the US, those countries have what we call local country requirements or regional specific requirements. Who can give me one or two examples of those requirements that are specific to a country? Anyone who can tell me a requirement that is different between, for example, the US and UK? So if I'm in the US and I'm rolling out Dynamics and I want to roll out if I'm in the UK and I want to roll out to the US, what kind of requirements will be specific to the US that is not in the UK?
One of the requirements I'll say is tax, like making tax digital. So the UK use UK GAAP, and the US use which one is that?
US GAAP. UK uses you can say IFRS as a standard.
Yes, International Financial Regulatory Standard, and United these other people use it GAAP. Yeah, I think I've
GAAP.
just
Yeah, so that's another very good example. Tax is a good example because no two countries have the same tax. No two countries have the same. Okay, go ahead, Tino. So
Yeah, so requirements that have to do with like import and export.
yes. So different countries have different export and import requirements. Another one could be forms. This country might say we want our invoice. The way we deal with businesses, invoices have to be presented in certain format, while in the US is different. Another one could be as simple as currency revaluation. Two countries don't have the same currency, so you have to do foreign currency translation. Even your in those currencies, your decimal points and decimal places, down to just thinking down to as you said,
checks format.
exactly, down to banking, because check is inside of banking regulations, the five formats.
Really, it's also
Yes.
a reflection of the type of people we have in leadership.
Okay. What does that mean? Well, somebody just made a comment. I guess the person unmuted and spoke. Please let's let's be guided. All right. So please, nothing to do with leadership here, guys. But let's move on. So what we're talking about is those gaps that can happen between, and that's why I like just muting everybody from the start. So it has nothing to do with leadership. It's basically around those requirements that differ from one country. And thank you guys for creating a little bit of that list, even down to invoice structure, down to a lot of them. You know, yeah, we have talked about currency, we have talked about banking, even asset accounting. Asset policies can be different. Parallel accounting, in terms of um, you know, reporting formats. The country might say locally we need a financial statement to be in this format, or they want to say we need our financials to be in another format. So you see, all these are concepts we call localizations. So these are specific country-specific requirements are called localizations. So the essence of the Globalization Studio is to help manage these localizations when they roll out into different countries. The requirements are complex. In some cases, these requirements are complex and basically frequently changed by the local government or by the country, in-country government, or by the government of those country. For example, we have invoicing now that is a regulation in EU but not in the US. Right? And they often have very tight laws to enforce these changes. So why do we have the Global Studio? The Global Studio is to help us manage these requirements that are in these various countries. So Dynamics has a functionality that identify what these local requirements are and help the business align with those requirements. Very good at that. Microsoft Dynamics is very good at that. And again, we have the Globalization Studio addresses these challenges by providing the following features. One, no code, low code globalization tools and services. Now, these are flexible, easy to use tools and services that make localization easier for Microsoft businesses or Microsoft applications. So once that changes are happening in those countries, Microsoft is already documenting those changes and making updates so that their customers can also comply. That's a very good. I mean, I love Microsoft for that. They also make it easier for partners and customers to create, extend, automate, and maintain their services through those changes that happen. Another is through what we call out of the box multi-country and regional localization content. It's this is Microsoft provided content. It's basically a content that continuously monitors and updates Microsoft to comply with most of these in-country local requirements that are legal in nature. So the customers don't need to worry their head once these changes are happening. For example, in Microsoft now we have invoicing as a core functionality. So many changes that have happened, Microsoft has updated to make sure that their customers can scale up and comply with these changes. So the tool that helps us in terms of complying with local requirements is what we call the Globalization Studio overview. There is no way again that you can, when you're in an interview, that you can talk about localization in terms of how you supported localization across different countries without talking about the Globalization Studio, because that is the powerhouse that not just identify these localizations, but make sure that you know they track it, they monitor it, and they make the solution available to their clients. You see, while sometimes we might not be getting these roles, is we don't align when we have conversations, we don't align the system functionality with some of the things that are coming out from our mouth in terms of our solutions, when we have this conversation. So you cannot say requirement gathering, like I said, without talking about success by design. You cannot talk localization in terms of when you're rolling out to other countries and you're identifying those local requirements as specific ones without talking about Globalization Studio. So, guys, this is the summary of our lecture today. Very briefly, Localization Studio consists of the following tools and services. So we have said that Localization Studio help businesses manage in-country localization requirements. And what tools. Again, these are tools. So Microsoft has a lot of tools. So this is now you understanding how vast the ecosystem of Microsoft is. So one of that tools is what we call regulatory configuration service. It's one tool. It's a standalone designer and lifecycle management service for where you have low code, no code, globalization functionality or requirement. We use the regulatory configuration service. It's a service that identified all the regulatory requirements in those for local, for those local entities or in country, and they help us to configure the system to be able to meet up with those requirements. The second one is electronic reporting. Very, very important tool in Dynamics. Very, very important tool in Dynamics, which is used to, it's a configuration tool that helps create and maintain regulatory electronic reporting, payment formats, and other features. So when there are requirements around regulatory electronic reporting, right? If you want to report based on local, now Dynamics has standard reporting functionality. However, if there's any requirement that needs you to provide reports based on a local requirement, an in-country requirement that is legal, let's say your head office is in the UK, but you have a branch in the US, and US just put a law that you have to present certain reports in certain formats. It is the electronic reporting that will help you produce those reports in those formats. Again, these are tools within Microsoft Dynamics that you need to be aware of. The third one is configurable business documents. I built on top of electronic reporting framework that enable business users to edit business document templates by using what we call the Microsoft Dynamics 365 service. The office applications and all that. Fourth is tax calculation. It's also another tool within the Globalization Studio. It's a hyper-scalable multi-tenant service that significantly enhances the core tax determination and calculation capabilities in D365. So where you have complex tax calculations that is out of the standard functionality for taxes, you have to use the tax calculation tool. We have electronic invoicing, e-invoicing that, again, is one of the requirements in EU. So it of course it helps to make sure it extends what we call it helps us helps businesses comply with electronic invoicing capabilities, and extends to more countries and regions to enable them configure the process of electronic invoices and make sure they are complying. Of course, we have out-of-the-box multi-country regional localization and regulatory updates. So from time to time, when there are changes in regulations in some of these countries, Microsoft Dynamics shares and updates those regulations. And of course, partner localization solutions that are established on the Microsoft Marketplace. So we have a marketplace where there are lots of applications. So when partners develop solutions, they publish it in the Microsoft Marketplace. You can do your research about Microsoft Marketplace. So a partner can come up with a new solution and design an app and just go and publish it there so that people can have access to it and buy it and use it. They might develop, for example, a small HRO function that does, make sure that staff members are clocking in and clocking out. Somebody can develop that solution, and if you want people to have access to it, you go and publish it in what we call the Microsoft Marketplace. So again, these are all tools that you can find within the Globalization Studio. So you cannot say you have done certain things without referencing the Globalization Studio, especially around electronic reporting, regulatory configuration service, and of course, e-invoicing. Yeah, so I think that's where we're going to end for the day. I think we've gone past by a few minutes. I don't know if we have any questions. When we come next week, we're now going to allow you to digest these topics we have learned for the past 4 weeks now. Please, when you're coming next week, make sure you take your time to go through and take notes. Like, make sure you are documenting this. You will need them. I mean, If you're in this session and you don't have a notebook and you don't go through these sessions again to really understand and do your research, you're not doing yourself good, right? So if you want to really enjoy these sessions and if you want it to be impactful to you, not to me, but to you, please go back to these recordings, get a notebook, start from beginning, because this is what gives you the foundation. It's not about jobs, really. I always say it that jobs are there. Jobs is not the problem. The problem is people are in a hurry, right? And when you're in a hurry, you will miss out on opportunities. And if you don't take your time to be grounded and to learn and to improve your knowledge, you will keep going round and round the circle. So sit down, get a note, go through the sessions again, build your capacity, increase your capacity to pick up these things. Because when you read and read and read, you begin to pick up this context and concept in your mind. When you open your mouth to say anything about dynamics, it comes out because you have taken your time to meditate through it. You have done your research, you have learned it very well. So that's my advice. Well, this 4 months has this that's what made me succeed in dynamics. I didn't just rush into it. I took my time to understand what is really dynamics. I know it's more than just the application, the software. I needed to understand what made dynamics dynamics. And I went and I did very deep research. It took me months of learning, months of asking questions, researching, and also familiarizing myself with the system. You know, that's how you grow to speak the language of dynamics. But it is a very large ecosystem. Don't mistake it for just the application you see. It's very large. You have seen that we have learned, only today we have learned 4 applications that are very major to your being successful in dynamics. So when we come next week, we're now going to go into the system design. We're going to go through in a very different approach where we're going to, again, log in and start understanding the architecture of the system. We're not just going to rush and start. We're going to understand architecture because that system you see has a build behind it. Before you start laying foundation, you need to understand the structure around